levels in video games that have become infamous for their difficulty. Don't get me wrong, gamers are almost always up for a challenge, but nobody was ready for this lot. I'm Jess from WhatCulture, and here are 10 levels that made you rage quit awesome video games. Number 10, the Sand Bird, Super Mario Sunshine. If you navigate Mario into a certain portal in Gelato Beach, you'll be dropped onto a bird made of sand blocks. While the creature soars through the sky, our hero must trek across its body, collecting 8 red coins. This is particularly tricky since each wing flap can cause the Italian plumber to tumble into the abyss below. But once you obtain all 8 red coins, you can collect the shine and move on. But here's the problem. There are only 7 red coins on the Sandbird. To collect them all, you need to wait for the bird to fly to the top of a tower where the final one is residing. Alright, so that's frustrating, but not too hard, right? But the problem is this bird brain decides to tilt his entire body 90 degrees before he reaches the tower, forcing Nintendo's mustachioed mascot to use all his jumping skills to stay on. This section is so tough any rational player would skip it entirely. Unfortunately, collecting this particular shine is a requirement. While there's certainly shines that are trickier to get in the game, this is the hardest one that's actually essential if you want to finish it. Number 9, Final Chapter, Limbo. Playdead's 2D side-scroller Limbo instantly made waves in the gaming community due to its monochromatic aesthetic, dark atmosphere, and open-ended themes. But another thing that made Limbo stand out was its minimalism. Since the game contains no dialogue or instructions, the player is expected to figure out everything themselves. However, this gets a little more frustrating in the final chapter as you have no clues about how to solve each puzzle. Not only that, each section in this chapter requires ruthless timing and precision to avoid being killed. So without being told what to do, you need to use magnet switches to move platforms around, activate gravity flipping switches to reach inaccessible areas, dodge gun turrets, and avoid being torn to shreds by the slew of minces. The placement of these insta-kill minces is also pretty cheeky since a bunch of them you can't see until you've already fallen onto them. By the time you realize you're approaching a death trap, you'll be hacked to pieces before you have a chance to move to safety. If you know exactly what to do, the final chapter shouldn't take you much longer than a minute to complete, but upon your first playthrough, expect to spend up to an hour grinding through it. Number 8, the FLYIN King, Earthworm Jim 2. Although every level in Earthworm Jim 2 is challenging, they're usually not too annoying since they're creative, fun, and hilarious. But after playing the FLYIN King level for 5 minutes, you will quickly have lost the will to live. The premise for the level sounds reasonably simple. While flying on his rocket, Jim must nudge a balloon filled with explosives across the terrain, and placing it beside the boss, Major Mucus. The only way to defeat Mucus is to shoot the combustible balloon while it's beside him. But this is easier said than done. Throughout your flight, sumo wrestlers will launch themselves at you using catapults. It's a weird game. Not only is it really hard to dodge these portly chaps, they drain your health and slow you down if they latch onto your rocket. Also, if you come into contact with any of the fireworks dotted around the arena, Jim will zoom ahead, forcing you to backtrack to retrieve your balloon. Also, because the level is filled with enemy ships and UFOs, you need to blast these baddies with your weapon. But if a stray shot hits the balloon, you'll explode it, and you'll have to go all the way back to the beginning. Number 7, the Temple of STYX, Hades. In Hades, the prince of the underworld, Zagreus, hopes to leave his chaotic world and reunite with his mother Persephone on the surface. Because you're literally in hell, you have to contend with demons, energy-draining lava, booby traps, and regenerating enemies. Just when you think the game couldn't get any less fair, you arrive in its final area, the Temple of STYX. Not only do the enemies here soak up damage like a sponge, most of their attacks poison Zagreus, sapping his energy down to nothing. But it gets worse. After you enter the temple, you must choose between 5 doorways, each leading you through a myriad of enemy-filled rooms. Now, only one of these doorways leads to the exit, and it's randomized with every playthrough. Each of these sections is so tough, you don't stand a chance at winning the game unless you find the exit upon your first or second try. If you find the exit on the 3rd or 4th attempt, you'll have so little health, the final boss is sure to kill you within seconds. The Temple of STYX is so frustrating because the chances of you getting through is based on luck. You can enter this terrain with full health and enough weapons to take down Olympus, but still lose because you kept picking the wrong door. Number 6. Flying Machine, Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is a delightful love letter to the 8-bit platformers of the 1980s. But not only did Yacht Club Games' game replicate the look and chiptune score of the era, it also maintained the tough-as-nails difficulty level. However, the developers went a little too far while designing the Flying Machine section. You see, all the levels require the titular knight to drive his shovel into surfaces below to propel himself upward and forward. With platforms and baddies constantly on the move, the player needs unwavering concentration with every landing to avoid falling into a bottomless pit. But Flying Machine adds in a factor that makes this utterly unbearable, and that's wind. As you try to make a perfect landing, sudden gusts will push or pull you away, making it extremely difficult not to fall to your death. If that wasn't tough enough, the level also has auto-scrolling sections and platforms that drop the instant you land on them. Also, the wind will constantly change direction, making it nearly impossible to get used to it. Coupled with the fact that the level concludes with one of the game's hardest bosses, it's fair to say that Flying Machine should go to hell. Number 5. Ashley, Resident Evil 4. No matter how much praise gamers may unreservedly give to Resident Evil 4, it's tough to find many people who are a fan of Ashley. That's because she keeps getting herself in danger while screeching, "Leon!" It's impossible not to find her damsel in distress shtick grating. But there's one thing more frustrating than rescuing Ashley, and that's playing as Ashley. After our curtain-haired hero Leon Kennedy releases Ashley from her restraints in Salazar's castle, you'll take control of her. To reunite with Leon, Ashley needs to traverse multiple areas facing off against zombies and solving puzzles without a weapon. Your only means of defeating the undead is to chuck lanterns at them, but since there's only a few lying around, you'll have to spend most of this section running away from the shambling creatures. The most maddening part is when you have to wind a crank to open doorways while zombies are approaching you. To avoid being eaten, you need to step away from the crank, causing the lock mechanism to slowly reset. Because of this, you'll be forced to leave and return to the crank over and over, which is time-consuming and boring. It may be irritating rescuing Ashley, but it's a walk in the park compared to playing as her. Number 4. Train Mission, Midnight Fight Express. No beat-em-up is complete without a level on top of a train. Now, because the carriage is pretty narrow, you don't have much room to move around in the train level. As a result, you'll need to take down enemies succinctly to avoid them crowding around you. And just when you get the hang of things, an enemy helicopter appears out of nowhere trying to take you out with a sniper. This addition completely screws up your flow, since you need to keep an eye on the sniper's laser sight while trying to eliminate a seemingly endless supply of thugs. When you jump inside the carriage, you feel relieved that you no longer have to deal with the helicopter. Or so it seems. Though the sniper gives you a breather at first, it's not long before he's shooting right through the train carriage trying to get a headshot on you. You can get so distracted by the sniper, you stop paying attention to the approaching enemies, allowing them to overpower you with ease. Number 3. Greenwood Village, Diddy Kong Racing. Despite Diddy Kong Racing's kiddie aesthetic, Rare's underrated racer was hard as hell, especially the silver coin challenge. In this segment, you have to collect 8 silver coins strewn around each course and come first. So not only do you have to hit every booster, avoid traps, and drive perfectly, you also need to go out of your way to collect every freaking coin. But for some reason, the developers decided they really wanted players to suffer while playing through this level. The coins are located in such awkward angles, you need to swivel and hairpoint turn around with unrealistic precision if you want to collect them all. If you make the slightest miscalculation, you'll U-turn or drive off course, wasting precious time. By the time you get back on track, you'll be so far behind, you might as well restart. Seriously, if you're playing Greenwood Village on hard mode, God help you. Not only do the races drive way faster, half the coins are barely on the track. Only a select few can beat Diddy Kong Racing on hard mode, purely because most players get stuck on this infernal level. Number 2. Elphael, Elden Ring. After slogging your way through Haligtree, you probably assumed you've beaten the hardest legacy dungeon in Elden Ring and are about to be rewarded for your efforts. Oh, little did you realize, the challenge has only just begun. After conquering Haligtree, you'll gain access to a hidden region known as Elphael. At this point, you'll probably be buzzing around to explore a new area, hoping it'll contain all sorts of treasures and upgrades. However, players will find themselves cursing this land's name shortly after entering. All of the hardest enemies you've had the misfortune of encountering throughout your playthrough reside here, and they're all very eager to meet you again. Sadly, you'll have very little time to just explore this region, as you'll be attacked literally every second. Although these enemies harbor some pretty nifty runes, it's exhausting to take them all on. If you somehow manage to make your way through Elphael, don't breathe a sigh of relief just yet. When you encounter Melania, who's often regarded as one of the hardest bosses ever, you'll experience a level of pain you never thought possible. Number 1. Cortex Castle. Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. Earlier platformers were a lot less forgiving than modern games, and the Crash Bandicoot games are no exception. So when Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time was finally announced, we assumed it wouldn't be as tough as its predecessors. Instead, the developers doubled down, making it as unreasonably difficult as possible. Before you've completed the first world, you'll notice that half the levels are harder than the hardest levels from the previous 3 games. And it keeps getting worse. Even though you're expecting the final level to be rock hard, Cortex Castle isn't challenging. It's a punishment. There's such a preposterous amount of explosives, pits, lasers, and phasing platforms, it feels like you're trapped in one of those impossible levels from Super Mario Maker. The final sprint is nothing short of apocalyptic, since you need to skid, jump, and bounce at precise intervals while juggling through the quantum masks and using their powers to advance. Once you die over 100 times, you'll realize that overthinking and trying to strategize are actually getting you nowhere. Only by using your muscle memory and reflexes do you stand even a chance at reaching the final goal. That's the end of our list. Do let me know down in that comment section if you can think of any other levels that made you rage quit awesome games. As always, I've been Jess from WhatCulture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're liking, come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great gaming lists.